This is it, folks. This is history as big as history can be made. This is landing men on the moon. This is proving aliens exist. This is proving an alien was real 900 years ago and lived and died and was buried on this earth.
Mr. Lloyd Pye.
Folks, I don't know how much of that I'm going to repeat during this presentation because I don't know what he was saying. So you're just going to have to bear with me as I repeat things that he might have said in that introduction. I want to thank him for that. Thank Phil for having me here to do this, to share this information with you all. I thank you all for coming, obviously. You have to make an effort to do these things. Can everybody hear me back there in the back? If not, just feel free about moving forward. This is about my speaking tone, so if you're having any trouble at all, there are plenty of seats up here. Just move forward, please. Now, before we get into it and get started, I want to share some information with you because it's important, and you'll see by the end of this presentation. By the end of this, you're going to want, I think, to share this information that I'm going to give you with friends and people. And when you do that, I guarantee you that the very first thing they're going to do when you try to tell them about it is they're going to go to Wikipedia to find out about the Starchild and find out about me. Now, I call it Wackipedia, not Wikipedia, because it's just wacky. Anything to do with alternative knowledge, anything at all, you cannot trust, because Wikipedia is not dedicated to finding the truth. You think they are. They're not. They are dedicated to supporting the mainstream science view of everything. So that anything at all that veers from that, as all alternative knowledge does, gets hammered. And they do not let the truth go in. They give those articles over to administrators within their system. You try to make a change on a Wikipedia thing that is being dominated by one of them, and it'll be changed back within an hour or two, if that long. They have things that the administrators do in their computers that let them know when any change has been made on a, quote, sensitive page. And I am, because of my profile and because of the profile of Starchild, we are super sensitive. So they're all over us. So what I have done, and what I want you to keep in mind, is those two websites. If someone wants to read the Wikipedia article about the Starchild, they can go to the Starchild Project, and I promise you, every single word is on that site, but the truth is under each line, each phrase, each paragraph, whatever. I tell you the truth, and I tell them the truth. And also with the Lloyd Pye website, if they check on me, yeah, it's a little louder now. If they check on me, same thing. Every single word that's on the Wikipedia article, and then my truth, I tell you the truth. And all of that, all of Lloyd Pye, all of the Starchild Skull, is built around one article written by a man named Stephen Novella for his own New England Skeptical Society in 1999. And you'll hear what happened in 1999. We had a DNA test, the first DNA test. The answer came in, said the Starchild was human. It turned out later that it wasn't, but that was the answer that science wanted. And so they latched onto it, and they won't let it go. And in 2006, I contacted Novella after it had been proven wrong, and I said, you really need to change this article, you need to update it, you need to pull it, you need to do something. And he wrote back and he said, the article stands as written, but then he changed the copyright date from 1999 to 2006. So if you go look at it now, it'll have a copyright of 2006, but it's still the 1999 article. And everybody uses that as in the mainstream, all the skeptics, all the critics. If you go out there and you look on the sites, the wars of words that go on between people about the Starchild and those who defend it and those who attack it. And those who attack it always use these articles. If you go on my website, you can read my own and the Novella article, word for word, with the truth underneath. So if you want to know the truth, if you want your friends to know the truth, that's the way to do it. Otherwise, they're going to come back at you and just say, what did you tell me about that for? Because it's a human and that's it. Okay? So with that said, let's dive into the actual presentation, which starts in Mexico in about 1930. Now, it begins here about 100 miles southwest of Chihuahua in 1930. By the way, this is where I live. I grew up in Louisiana and now live here right on the water. So I have lived through the oil spill. I have lived through the oil spill. I've lived through Katrina and the oil spill. That's why I'm here instead of here. So anyway, I've just been very unlucky here the last few years with weather. But anyway, so 100 miles southwest of Chihuahua near the Copper Canyon area, a young girl from Ciudad Juarez is right across the border from El Paso. That's where El Paso, Texas is. And her family had come across the border and eventually became American citizens. And she was by that time about 13, 14, 15 years old. And the family was going back to the village for the first time since, because there would be no problem moving across the border and all that with her and her siblings. So when they got there, the kids were all told, do not go into the mine tunnels and caves in this area because it's high desert. If you know northern Arizona, Grand Canyon, if you've never been there, you've seen pictures of it. It's dry scrubland. So naturally you tell a teenager what not to do, and she started scheming immediately to do it. So she got a large basket and told them she was going to go out picking berries or looking for fruit and things, and she just hauled it as far as she could get away from the village to do some exploring on her own, and she found a mine tunnel. And she went in and she found far enough in to where she could still see clearly what was going on, about 50 feet in. She saw a human skeleton lying on its back on the floor of the mine tunnel. Now, a cave, we all know the difference. A cave is all big and squirrely. A mine tunnel is, anybody can see the difference. So she saw that. She saw it laying on the ground. She got a little closer and she saw that there was a mound of dirt beside the one lying on its back. And so she thought that looked like a grave, and she got a little closer and she said she noticed a misshapen hand extending out of the dirt of what looked like a grave. And sure enough, clearly something was in there. And that misshapen hand, she noticed, was wrapped around the upper arm bone of the skeleton lying on its back on the floor of the mine tunnel. So when she got a little closer, she realized that the dirt was, still clumped and loose. If it's in a mine tunnel, there's no raining to compact it or anything like that. She thought, I could probably scrape it out. And she did. She scraped it out with her hands very easily. And she exposed another skeleton, which she said had a misshapen body. That's all she said. Because she was describing this much later in life, when she had no idea that the few things she was going to say about it would then later become important after her death. So she recovered both skeletons with the idea of sneaking them back into the States and maybe donating them to her high school. Back then, they always had a skeleton on a rod in the biology department. I don't know, some of y'all are too young for that, but So she thought, there'd be some degree of coolness to that. So she gathered all of the bones into the basket, but without a plan for how to do this, how to sneak them in. So rather than just waltz into the village with them, she found a ravine with a tree overhanging it, the roots had been washed away and opened up, so it made like a shelf, a nice perfect shelf with some roots. She tucked all the bones up under there. Brilliant idea, not wonderful hiding place. Except that night, torrential rain came, and for the next 2 days it rained really hard. When she could get there a day or so after that, they were all washed away. The water had risen as it does. That's what makes those ravines. That's what washed the land from underneath the roots of the tree, and they were gone. So she walked downstream, and she found in a bush the 2 skulls, and one of the misshapen one had its lower face knocked off except for a piece of maxilla that was detached but there, and it lost its cheekbones in front of its face, as you see, and the human had lost one of its cheekbones in the tumble to get to that point. So she was happy to have the skulls. So she took them back to El Paso. Easy to sneak 2 skulls in. So they became souvenirs to her. She had assumed it was just a deformed human head. But they were her souvenirs, and they were cool, and she liked them. And she shellacked them, put them in a cardboard box, kept them her whole life. Early 90s, she's dying. She decides, like you would with a pet, she wants to find a home for them. Her husband doesn't like them. So she asks friends, and through a series of friends, they end up with Ray and Melanie Young, who I heard their name anywhere, so I know he mentioned those. A couple in El Paso, Texas. Now, the reason they offered them to Melanie was because she had been a neonatal nurse for like 15 years, so she was very familiar with human deformity. And as she looked at that one and held it, she said to her husband, this is not human deformity as I understand it. The bone is too light, all of the features are different, and you'll hear why and all that. And she said, and look, it's got that crease in the top of the head, it's got those big bulging parietals. They were both members of MUFON in El Paso. That's the Mutual UFO Network. They both knew about aliens. So it was just an odd coincidence of circumstance. So she said, I think that skull would fit perfectly in the head of a gray. Because you all know gray aliens, I'm sure the prototypical look of that is what's called a heart-shaped face. They have a crease here, they have a bulge here, and they have a very narrow lower face, heart-shaped. And she said it has all of that. I think it could be the skull of a gray alien. And so Ray said, yeah, it could be. How do we do that? So they put the word out through MUFON, who in the field of alternative knowledge in this country knows about skulls. And my name came up because at that point, the book that I had written was called Everything You Know Is Wrong, and I hope you mentioned something about that. And it was about human origins and hominoids and things like that. And in talking about the hominoids, I talked a lot about skulls. So that was how they called me in. I took a look at it. I said, well, it's probably a deformity, almost certainly a deformity. I don't know what kind. I've never seen any of this before, but the odds on it being an alien, I think, are just zillion to 1. And so let's go with the assumption that it's a deformity, but I'll take it out and I'll confirm what that deformity is. And I said it shouldn't take more than a few months, 6 months at max. And here I am. It'll be 12 years in February. So I was completely wrong about that time estimate. But it turned out to be a lot more complex than I thought it would be. Nonetheless, so I took it out and began the process of finding out about its physiology. And that was a long, complicated, convoluted process. Well, let's start with looking at the front view. Now, these are the real ones. These are copies. These are stereolithographic copies, what you see up here and what you will hold. They're exact copies, I mean exact, as close as science can get them, same weight, same everything. But this is the real deal here. Now, if you notice, the differences are, and I can show you here with this, a normal human eye socket, see that? It's 2 inches, 2 knuckles deep to go back to the foramens and back. With a Starchild, you can can see that. It doesn't even go quite one. It's very much shallower. So you have a real difference there. If you look at the brow ridges, all humans, all primates have varying degrees of brow ridges. You see those, you feel your own, everybody's got them. And then every human nose comes down, no matter how big your honker, it's going to have a little dip up here between the brow ridge and the beginning of the nose. Starchild has neither of those. It has no brow ridges, as you can see. I mean, you look at it, absolutely flat, and you see that its nose has no dip at all. It goes straight down. You'll be able to see it when you come up closer. But anyway, take my word for it. A complete difference there. There are no sinuses under here, as you will see in another slide. So we're already into some really significant differences. Now this is the size of it. It's a little smaller. As you see, it's a little smaller than a normal human head. All of us in here, we would have, it's about the size of maybe his head, approximately. I put Jaden Smith up here, 12-year-old actor in The Karate Kid, Will Smith's son. That's about the size. A 5-foot adult or about a average 12-year-old. Now, this is the copy with the jaw that I showed you. And you can see that if it had eyeballs like we have, they would be bulging out like frog eyes. So it would have had a problem growing up in any kind of an atmosphere where there are other children with eyes like that. And we assume it had eyes because they're absolutely perfect in their design. And if you put your fingers in, you can feel ridges and dips exactly the same in both of them. So it's not a deformity. Its genes told it to grow in all of these different ways. And that's important. The fact that its genes told it to grow different in 25 major areas, which we'll see. It make sure that it's not, we think, entirely human. Now, here's another comparison. You see this line across where the nose bones connect into the brow, and you've got that piece right there. So we line those two up, excuse me, and this is what we get, and we can see the differences already. They're very dramatic. This goes from back here at the back end of the depth of the 2-inch cone that makes up a human eye socket. It's shoved down and inward toward the nose. So if the eyes are centered like ours, they're going to be here, and it's going to have a real big upper lid. If they have eyes, and if it's got eyes like ours, of course, they'll be sitting out, so the lids will have to come over. It'll be a pretty long throw to do that. We think it had eyes. It's got all the little points of attachment for muscles, but they couldn't really be like our eyes. But we don't know what eyes they had. There was a time when we thought, well, maybe it has kind of like bug eyes or something, where they take in a full 180 field of vision without moving. And the idea of the big black alien eyes, well, maybe that's what it is. Maybe they're all iris and they just see it all without moving. Possibility, but not sure about that. Okay, this is a profile view, and we begin to see some of the differences. Now, these are just the parts of a normal frontal bone, the parietals, the sphenoid, the temporal, and then the sutures, coronal sutures, like that. And we see that in the Starchild, and we see that the human found with it, which we know was an adult female. She had a concussion at some point that healed up right there. That's what that is. But we see, again, the brow ridge and the dip, and we see the lack of brow ridge and the no dip. So very different design there. The pieces, the parts are here, but they're in a different configuration. And obviously the ear hole is much lower, the mastoid bone much lower. This here, the pterygoid plate, I always have to mention that because everybody sees it and they say, what are those things sticking out like that? The pterygoid plate is just a bracing bone. You see how it braces up against this? If you take a real hard shot in the grill, boom! If you don't have those bones there protecting you, it'll jam right back in, go right into your brainstem and kill you. It's just a protective measure. Nature's wonderful in its design. It really is. Here we see the rear view, and this, oh, I'm sorry, let me go back because it's important to say one thing. See the inion, this knot here, this is important to mention. feel everybody do this. Reach around the back of your head and feel this knot that we all have back here. That is where our neck connects to our head. All primates have that. If you've got a head sitting on a neck, whatever the angle, whether you're a quadruped, biped, whatever, you have that where your neck is connecting in with a couple of really big muscles. The Starchild does not have that. And not only does it not have that, it has a dent. You can see it very clearly and you can feel it. It's got an actual dent instead of the bump that it should have. A very significant difference. And as you see, it's missing. That's where it is, right there. Now, this is the occipital bone of a human, normal human, and this is its inion. This is the bump that you ought to have, and these are the fossa with the big muscle attachment points you see right there. Very normal, parietal, occipital. You see the Starchild's has been just like stretched upward in a completely different design, and you have this crease. You see the rounding of the crown, we all have that, but the Starchild doesn't. It has a noticeable, distinctive crease. You can't miss it. You can't miss it. And that's, again, a different genetic code, a different set of genetic instructions coming in to make it grow that way. Here we have a top view, and we see that the frontal bone, this is tilted a little bit, but you still see that the frontal area is a little smaller than normal, and the parietals are much bigger. And I always mention as a sidelight that Einstein had a little bit bigger parietals than the rest of us. And he was Einstein, so it can happen. Sagittal suture, this one, the red one, and coronal suture. All right? This is the underside view, as you see, and we see the missing zygomatic arch, cheekbone. And what happens here is your chewing muscles come up through your cheekbones, and they fan out against the side of your head to connect your jaw, and so you can chew and do all the things that you do. When you die and you become a skeleton, that's why both of the lower jaws are gone. It falls loose. It's not really attached to the skull. The lower jaw is not. All right, so you see that the Starchild is missing both of its zygomatic arches, and they go from these stobs here to there. Boom, boom. And they don't swing out as wide because, as you see, the throw, the angle is much less. It's much tighter, much thinner face, and that indicates, again, that it had a much smaller face. This part is important right here, the basilar part, because it helps tell us that this female was at least over the age of 25, and more like, because of the wear on her teeth, she was 35 to 45 when she died, according to people who know how to judge these things. We do not know how old the Starchild was when it died. We thought it was a child initially, but then later, as you will see, we found out that it wasn't. But nonetheless, this bone right here is called the basilar part, and it is the last bone in the skull to fuse. It fuses between the ages of 20 and 25. Everything else is fused but that. So that would be an indication that the Starchild died before the age of 25, or because that's not a very good fusion point, it could have been knocked out along, if enough force hit it to knock all this off, that could have gone with it. So it doesn't really imply an age, and we can't say. This is the neck this is where a normal human neck rests, through this area right here. And we see the difference in the Starchild. It's very much compressed and ovalized to about half the size of a normal human neck. A very different neck and in a very different position, as we'll see later. This is where the connection points are, the fossa for the Starchild, because it's not up here at the inion. The muscles connecting the neck should go up through here, as they do with the human, as you see. All this area, and you see the Starchild is that much smaller. Again, very small neck. These are the zygomatic arches, cheekbones, and you see the small difference in the Starchild. Very much tighter, narrower face, as I said. Balance points of the craniums. Now this is interesting and important to understand. A human being is balanced well back of center, of the center point. It's like a fat kid and a skinny kid on a seesaw. And the skinny kid is the cause because we're hollow up here. We have big frontal sinuses in here. We have those big deep eye sockets that you saw taking up a lot of room. We have our nasal passages. We have our mouths. So from here forward, there's a lot of empty space. And all this is just solid bone and brain back here. So the balance point has to be back from center for us to comfortably hold our heads upright on our spines and on our necks. That's okay? You need a break here?
No.
Now, with the Starchild, it's dead center. It's absolutely the foramen magnum, the opening where the spine comes in, has been shifted forward underneath by about 1.5 inches. Very noticeable. And with the extension back here of the parietals and the lack of sinuses, eye sockets, and very little in the way of nose and mouth, as we'll see later, the balance point has to go forward. And look, lo and behold, nature somehow figured that out and gave it perfect balance point front and back, and side to side. Isn't that remarkable? If you're going to get a deformity, as science says this has to be, as you will see later, science answers everything we say about the Starchild with just saying it has to be a deformity because there's no such thing as aliens. And so if it's going to be a deformity, how would the deformity know to do all these things different and yet make it all mix perfectly? Now, this is really interesting. When I took it finally to a brain specialist who would talk to me, and understand, when I would take this out to specialists, it was I would get maybe 1 or 2 out of 10 that would even talk to me and tell me anything. And most of them would say, okay, well, I'll tell you what I know, but you can't use my name. Very few would let me use their names because there is an absolute restriction among mainstream science for having anything to do with certain forbidden subjects like UFOs, like aliens, like Bigfoot, like hominoids in general. Anything like that is verboten, and they have to think long and hard before they'll even talk about it, even in private, even with a guarantee that you won't reveal their name. They're still afraid to do even that much. That's how vicious are, the people that patrol mainstream science and make sure that everybody toes the line as they're supposed to. So, I'm talking to this guy, and he's very negative about the whole thing, but he's kind of willing to talk as long as I won't tell his name. He just got into it. He just grumble, and wow, this is really weird. So this is what came out of it. He wanted to measure the craniums to see how big the brains were, right? Now, as we sit here in this room, we're all about 1,400 cubic centimeters. That's the average, 1,400 cubic centimeters. But because these were small, he said these ought to be about 1,200, about his size, about 1,200 cubic centimeters. All right? So he took the human brain and you put a bag in and you pour flaxseed in, you pour the flaxseed out and you pour it into a measuring thing and you can tell just how much. Measured it out right at 1,200. He's a brain guy. He knows what he's looking at. So he said, well, that ought to be 1,200 too. So pour the flaxseed in, pour. It's about 1,200. Pour. Wow. Pour. Wow. Pours it out. 1,600 cubic centimeters. Now, figure it out because we haven't yet. 1,200 cubic centimeters in a brain in this head, or a head like this, 1,400 cubic centimeters in all of ours, and somehow 1,600 cubic centimeters in here. Now, it really doesn't make sense for a number of reasons, and we still don't really understand it. Obviously, the thinness of the bone. Oh, I haven't mentioned this. The bone of the Starchild is at least half as thick as normal human bone. It weighs half as much. which you'll feel. And so the thinness of the bone adds some. The lack of sinuses adds some. The lack of depth of eye sockets adds some. But this takes away. This adds, but it doesn't balance up. It doesn't add up to fully 1/3 more. It's a real mystery. But the biggest mystery of all was your cerebellum sits here. It sits back here, protected by this curve of bone, and it's got these edges in the inside of the skull called sulcuses. You can feel them in this. You've got to be real careful if you do this, but if you have a need to, they're in there. And so what it does is it holds the cerebellum in place, because that is your software of you. It is all the things you do that are not part of thinking. It's your breathing, it's your blood running through your body, it's your urine being made, it's just all the things that your body has to do that you just can't, you don't think about. It is you. It is like 80% of everything that you do, that little thing, that thing the size of my fist does it. Cerebellum, right back there. Very well protected, very well braced up. But in the Starchild, he noticed that those sulcuses are just like with the missing Indian, they're worn down to almost nothing. And because of the design of this, he said, you know, that brain should have slid right out of the foramen magnum. The way it's designed, and all that extra bulk to it carried back there. Because when you have hydrocephaly, for example, where you have great pressure in your head, that's what kills you. It's the pushing of your cerebellum out of your foramen magnum, and it kills you. So he said, that brain, that cerebellum, it's just not there, or it's made of a material that is very unlike our brains. It's much harder. Wow. That day I walked out, I had slowly been moving away from the idea that it was a deformity. When I walked out of that meeting, I knew it wasn't a deformity. You can't have that, a different kind of brain, and be a human. So, this is the chewing muscles that I mentioned to you, and you just can see the line, actually, in life, in the real one. You can just see the demarcation very easily, and same thing with the Starchild. Reduced by half. Again, a very small lower face, exactly like the aliens. Great. Exterior surfaces, this is amazing. Now, this is the exterior surface of the bone. Starchild. Needs some explanation. You've all heard the story that our bodies change out completely every 7 years. Have you not? We're new physical beings except for our brains. Our brains don't change, but every other part of us changes out within every 7 years. And the way it's done with bone is through these lacunae. Some of them are where the cells here transfer over, slide over, it's amazing, and go in to be destroyed, to be recycled. And others of these holes are where the new ones come up to replace. Right? Absolutely essential. Got to have them. Got to have them if you're going to be a primate on this planet. Whammo. So if this is a deformity, where'd they go? What's that about? Now, talking about the bone earlier, it's half as thick or less, weighs half as much, but it's very, very different. This is human bone composition in a mass spectrometer. The spikes are at carbon, oxygen, phosphorus, and calcium. And the rest of them down here, sodium, magnesium, aluminum, like that. Look at Starchild. Big spike in carbon and oxygen, lower in phosphorus, lower in calcium, which means that it has a much higher level of collagen. Where's the highest amount of collagen in your body? In your teeth. The Starchild's bone is made of tooth enamel. And as it turns out, it's much harder than normal human bone. Weighs half as much, half as thick, 2 or 3 times as hard. Big surprise. Big surprise. This is the detached piece of maxilla that I was telling you about. As you can see, there was yet another tooth here that was broken off. But nonetheless, here they were before this one was sacrificed to testing. I'll tell you about that later. And this is the roof of the mouth. It's only 1 inch. 1 inch. Really, really tiny. And guess what? Flat, totally flat. Roof of the mouth, flat. So did it have a tongue? Well, if it did, it was really small, like a bird tongue or something. You got to have some arch for that, for your tongue to fit. So when we first got it, the first test we did, the first test was X-rays, obviously, this, the obvious and the simple one, and we saw that it had teeth in the upper part, 5 teeth. So the radiologist said, oh, well, you got teeth down, you got teeth up, it's got to be a child, about 5 or 6. So we didn't know any better. We said, okay, called it the Starchild. Big mistake, huge mistake, because that immediately prejudiced all scientists against us because they said, oh, well, you think it's an alien, can't have anything to do with you. And that was it. It was a big mistake. And I've lived to regret it many a time. But as you see, teeth up, teeth down, but we found out later that the teeth are so worn, heavily worn. See these chips in the enamel here? You see these cracks? That's called crazing. That's worn teeth. It's not flat like the female, but they're heavily worn. And it's hard to imagine a 5 or 6-year-old with a face that small generating enough torque, even if it's eating sand every day, to do this. But, grinding corn on stone mortars with stone mortar and pestle, that's going to put grit in the food. But when the experts said, no, that's adult level wear and tear to get it up to that. But also, too, when they did pull the tooth out to test it, this was it. And I remember them saying, boy, man, that thing was hard to pull out. That was hard. It just flew over my head because it didn't mean anything to me. I didn't know what it meant. But when a child has teeth that are 5 or 6 and they're ready to come out, those roots go away. They absorb into the body. You ever notice when a kid's tooth comes out, it's just the crown. And when the teeth come down from the top that you saw in the X-ray, the roots grow as they come down into position. That's how it works. I didn't know any of that, but I found it out. So anyway, it wasn't a child. It was an adult of some age. We don't know what age. And still don't. Now, how does science explain it? Well, it has to be a deformity. First and foremost, has to be a deformity. So, what are the deformities? Well, it was cradle-boarded. A lot of them will insist that still to this day, that it was cradle-boarded. Because why? It has flat rear of its head, cradle-boarded. It suffered from hydrocephaly. Why? Because it has expanded parietals. It has some swelling in its head, so that means it's hydrocephaly. Or it suffered from progeria. You know that Tom Hanks movie, Shipwrecked or Washed Away or whatever it is? You remember where he says, I have made fire. You know, that part? Well, that scientists are like that. When they come up against something they don't really understand, they scurry behind something called Occam's razor, which is that the simplest answer is probably the right one. And they come up with these numbskull simple answers, and it's like, I have thought of a simple answer, and that has to be it, because they thought of it. And all of these from the very beginning, that they've said it, every deformity. We have experts, we have real experts, over a dozen, that worked it over. You can go on the website and see their report. Experts have said that all of this, there's no deformity. There's no combination of deformities. Those reports are totally ignored. The Stephen Novella report is used by everybody as the single reference against it. We are well documented now, as you'll see if you read those articles that I told you about. We have footnotes out the wazoo on the Starchild one. So, you'll see very quickly what I'm talking about. Cradle boarding. This is when you tie a baby's head in a primitive society to a board so the mother can put it on her back and do her daily work and stooping over and doing the things they have to do, crops, whatever. And if you have a baby on your back and its head is not strapped down, its head will do like this because it's very weak, very big head, relatively speaking, and it'll hurt its neck and probably kill it. So they strap the baby to, this is just a Navajo, but any culture that does it on a board, this is what you'll get, a flat head. This is the human found with the Starchild x-rayed, and you see that she was indeed cradle-boarded. This is what a real cradle-boarded head looks like. And it always, always, always stops at the inion. Why? Because you can't go past that knot back there, because then you're into tearing the muscles off the neck. Tearing the neck muscle, off the skull. So it always stops here. It always looks like this. It's always about as big as the palm of my hand. and it is as flat as that table. It is as flat as the board you put it on. Why? Because a baby's bone is so soft that when you pin its head to something, over time it's going to take the shape. So they come out, a cradle-boarded head, and sometimes you can see, if you're walking around in an airport, you'll see some just really flat heads in back, and those were kids that still to this day could have been, especially in Mexico. You'll see that sometimes. But anyway, there you go, truly cradle-boarded head. But here's the real kicker on, look at the Starchild. Look at the convolutions. You can see them, and you can feel them. It is not as flat as a board. Not even close. Not even close. So when I would point these things out to people who would try to tell me it was cradle boarded, they would get very upset. But when I pointed this out to them, they would get really upset, because if you look at this, this is looking ahead, but if you're going to cradle board a kid and you've got to stop at the Indian, you're going to crank his head back a little bit. But that's good, because he can breathe and everything. He's okay. You did that to the Starchild, he's choked in minute 1. He is strangled. He's dead the first time you try to do it. You couldn't possibly have been tying that head to a board and had it live. You show this to them, they get all grumpy and it had to have happened. So, it's just so funny to watch these guys squirm. Anyway, the Starchild is a hydrocephalic. Well, you all should know what a hydrocephalic is. It's water on the brain or in the brain. And if you get that, it means your spinal fluid is it's not water, it's spinal fluid, but it's called that. And your spinal fluid is not draining out the way it should. And in the old days, and as Philip said, the Starchild it died 900 years ago. We had carbon dating, and it said that it died 900 years ago. So there were no shunts.
How old is the feet?
They both died 900 years ago. They were both carbon dated at 900 years ago, plus or minus 40 years. And they were carbon dated at separate labs at different times. So there's just no doubt they died together approximately 900 years ago in that mine tunnel, the way the lady told the story. So, 900 years ago, there were no shunts. Now, kids born with it, they can shunt it, and they can live reasonably normal lives. But what it is it's like blowing air up in a balloon, really. It's uniform. The pressure is uniform. There's no pointing the pressure in any particular direction. So you're not going to get a crease. A moron can see this. A moron can see this. You're not going to get a crease, and you're going to get splits in the sutures from the pressure. And there are no splits in any of the sutures of the Starchild. Now, experts know this. They know this, and they'll still sit there and argue with me about it, because they have to come up with something. And so they'll just rally in behind some stupid idea like this, and they just will not give it up, no matter what. All right, now, here's another point of interest. You see these veins, that's the brain pressing into the bone of the skull. Clearly no water, no fluid on this brain, and you see the Starchild has the same thing. Could have been fluid in the brain, obviously, but not on the brain. And that's the more common one. Okay, so progeria. Now, this is the latest fad among the skeptics and the experts. This is the one you'll read on Wikipedia. I've hammered them so hard on the cradle boarding and hydrocephaly. They've rallied behind this because it's so exotic and so weird. You've probably heard of it. When a kid is born with this, male or female, they in the womb they start aging rapidly. And they'll generally die before the age of 10 or 12, like that, because they're aging at a very accelerated rate. So, but still they're human beings. They have human eyes and human eye sockets. They have brow ridges, they have noses, they have ears, they have a neck, a normally placed neck, but a much smaller face. And the heads do look swollen because the face is so down, and the bones do thin out. There's no question. So it has some of the things that the Starchild has, but it also has the roundness. It doesn't have the creases and do all that stuff. And more importantly, the bones, as they thin out, what happens to the bones of old people? They get brittle. They do thin out, but they get brittle and weak and they break. And that's what happens to these kids. They're very fragile. And so there's the Starchild with its bone 2 or 3 times as hard, and they're still trying to say it's progeria, just because they have to come up with something to explain it. They just can't acknowledge that they've got a real problem explaining this thing. All right, now here we have the front view x-ray. You saw the side view x-ray, and these are the eye sockets, and this is the frontal sinuses of a typical human. This is where they are and what they look like. And as you see in the Starchild eye sockets, there's not even a vestige of a frontal sinus. Now, that's extremely unusual. What do you think your sinuses are for? You think they're for something to do with cleaning the air that you breathe, or in some way protecting you from bacteria or germs or something like that? Not true. Not true at all. What your sinuses do is they allow you to talk, to resonate the way I am speaking to you now. It gives your voice resonance. Because if I had no sinuses at all,
my voice would sound something like this. I would sound more like a robot or something like that.
because there would be no resonance. Now, are you seeing a pattern here? Think about it a minute. You've got no resonance to speak. You've got a very small mouth, very small tongue, very small neck, very big brain. What does that suggest? Communication by telepathy. Does it not? It's got everything it needs to communicate telepathically. And yet it's got teeth and it eats because we can see that it did. So that kind of weighs against that. But it's just something to think about. All of that unique set of traits that it has. Because everybody says when they're taken, when they interact with grays in any way, it's always they communicate telepathically. Something to think about. All right, this is a CAT scan of the Starchild's head. And this, while not a human inner ear, this is the size of a human inner ear. And this is the size of the Starchild's inner ear, twice that size. And the people that have looked at this who know about it, they say, no idea. No idea. Maybe because it has that bigger head on that little bitty neck, because that's a balancing mechanism. Maybe it needs a better balancing mechanism for that. Don't know. But it is unusual. Now, you've all heard the stories, I'm sure, of the women who claim that they are taken on board a UFO. They are made pregnant. They come home. There's no doubt that they're pregnant. They go, they get a sonar scan. They're pregnant, frequently with twins. And in the 4th month, always in the 4th month, they come, they get it, they take the fetus, and the woman wakes up with every sign of a miscarriage except no fetus. She has been harvested. And I don't know how much you know about that, but it goes on in many countries, and it's happening. It goes on in your country. And it happens on a regular basis. Women don't like to talk about it. Men like to talk about it even less. But it happens to men as well because they take sperm from men. They take eggs from women. They make them pregnant. So, a woman named Josie Galante, in Taos, New Mexico, this happened to her in 1990. She was harvested in 1990. And always, always, they will come back and get you when your hybrid child is somewhere between the age of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, and there are even reports of them getting them at 10 and 12. But generally, it's when they're younger. So she was taken on board in 1995 to see her 5-year-old hybrid son. And she was told to spend time with it, play with it, get to know it, which she did. And she came to believe that it was her child, as they always do. Now understand, these women and these men, when these experiences are over, the aliens do what's called, they put a memory screen or a memory block on them. If you don't know about this, it makes you where you can't remember the experience at all or very clearly. You'll maybe have bad dreams, or you'll have nightmares, or you'll have visions, but you're not sure it actually happened. But all of us are different. And so some people come through that experience with a much clearer vision of it, maybe halfway. They're pretty sure it happened, but they're kind of shady on some of the details. And others come through it with really, really good memories of it, like they didn't even put a screen on, like they might have forgot or something. They can just remember with astonishing clarity every little detail. That happens too. So Josie was one of those people who had a really good memory of it. And so she was an artist, and she drew the son that she saw. And this is the frontal view of him. And this is just showing that these experiences of these women are so common that they are a stereotype now, and it's shown in films. And this little boy was just in a movie. They bulked his head up, and they gave him that scraggly blonde or scraggly, dirty-looking hair that all the women described, that the kids look bad, and their hair is so thin and unkempt, and it's clear that they're hybrid something. Their eyes are a little different. This kid's, of course, they couldn't do much for his eyes, but you get the idea. I'm not just making this up. It is a common thing that goes on out there, whether you're aware of it or not. Now, this is putting the profile shot, putting the skull up against it. Now, it's pretty remarkable that she did this in 95, and the Starchild didn't come out to public view till 99. Now, the ear is a little higher than it should be, so there's a couple things wrong with it. She's got a brow ridge and nose and all, but still, she got the neck pretty much right, and it just, has a good look to it. Now, another guy contacted me, and he said, in 78, the story about the lawyer? And I said, no, a lawyer had been taken on board, and he had a good memory of it as well. So he paid to have a sculptor work until he got what he believed were the grays that took him. And these eyes are pretty good because remember we talked about the Starchild. It would need, if the eyes are going to be down here, they're going to need a pretty big eyelid to cover over, and sure enough, and he's got it up until the cheekbones. The cheekbones are too big, but still this looks about right for what you would be looking for, except the neck is too big, but the ear's in the right place, no crease in the top, but still there are things wrong in each and some things right, but it's an interesting blend. 95, 78, 99. What are the odds? Now, these are some images that come from various graphic artists who have tried to, or artists who have tried to depict what the Starchild might have looked like, and so I give you a variety and you can take kind of your pick. This is a magazine, excuse me, a magazine cover where the graphic artist took his daughter and just morphed her face. Now, of course, you can see the eye socket and the eye don't match up, but still, it's a pretty interesting technique, and I leave it on there because I think it was a great idea. This is Mark Savy, and you'll see that he did a really interesting way of going about trying to make it all work out right, but he forgot the crease in the top, and he's got a much, much too heavy lower jaw. But still, it's a pretty interesting look when you lay the skull kind of underneath it. But now, Rob Roy Menzies does a fusion of the X-ray too, but he took the X-ray and he just built around it. And when he sent me this, I said, God, could you make it look a little less annoyed? So he sent back the final version. After we worked on it, we got this. Now this is, you might recognize the version on the book Communion by Whitley Strieber, the famous book Communion by Whitley Strieber. This is the iconic look of the gray alien. No crease, just this is it. Jumped off millions of book covers into the minds of people, and this has become like the image of the gray, except for one thing. This was done by a graphic artist whose assignment was to give me something that'll scare the hell out of people from the book publishers. And so he did. But it actually looks very little like a real gray. Very little. To my surprise, when I heard this story, I was like shocked. When I heard it from Bud Hopkins, the man himself. I mean, Bud is one of the top regressors of people who claim they have these events. He and Dr. David Jacobs are the two leaders in this field. And so what Bud said is they use this as a litmus test with people that claim that they have had experiences with aliens. They know that most people think that that's the way they're supposed to look. So they'll put that image of that in front of them and say, is this what you saw? And if they say, yeah, look just like that, they know pretty quick that this is not somebody to take seriously. But if they put that image and they say, is this what you saw? And if they say, no, that really, they know that's supposed to be what they're supposed to say, but if they've got the courage to sit there and say, no, that isn't what I saw, then they know they're dealing with probably somebody who's telling the truth, because the truth of it is, this is much more. When Bud saw this, he said, oh, well, that's what they're supposed to look like. And this was before I knew that. So anyway, pretty interesting. Now, people always ask, well, have you ever had a forensic model done, a clay model, And finally, the History Channel, one of the television channels in the States, paid the money to have, I don't have the money to do anything hardly. It's amazing I've gotten done as much as I have, but I certainly didn't ever have the money for that. But they did, to be part of a television show that featured the Starchild. So this is what he came up with, and if you look at the thing that Rob Roy came up with a few years before, you see a lot of synchronicity, except for his neck is too big, and the eyes look very human. And when I saw it, I tried, argued with him a little bit, and I said, Bill, you can't have human eyes in those eye sockets. He says, yeah, no. When I tried to put the human eyes in, they stuck out like frog eyes. And I said, well, didn't that tell you something? He said, yeah, it told me I had to cut them in half to make them fit. And the same thing with the neck. He said, well, I only have human templates to go with, and I couldn't see that little bitty neck. But you can just see the muscles going out beyond where they really should go. This is what they really, it's more like that. But anyway, all that said, this is pretty cool. This is really pretty cool. And if you watch how he did it, it really is cool. And you'll see those neck muscles go on, and he'll expand them out. Yeah, pretty cool. Now, look around beside you. If you see anybody sleeping, wake them up, because I'm going to do it again, because it's really cool. Now, one of the things that people always talk about and people always ask me is, it looks so, human enough. Is it possible, would it be possible for for aliens to walk among us and not be seen, not be noticed? Well, it is possible. So if you see anybody that looks like this, let us know. Let us know. It could be. Okay, getting serious again. Two things in the Starchild skull are not found in any other creature on Earth. It has unknown fibers that are embedded in the matrix of its bone, and it has unknown red residue is in its cancellous holes. Now, I'm going to explain that, but keep in mind, not found in any other species on Earth. All right? Now, this is the cuts in the skulls for the DNA testing. We'll talk about that later. But the Starchild on the left, human on the right, just to, again, show you the difference in the thickness of the bone. And yet the Starchild is much harder. It's very dramatic, as you can see. So what we're going to be talking about is what got cut out of here and put under a scanning electron microscope. And when it was, they saw this and they said, well, what the heck are those? They are fibers buried in the matrix of the bone, pulled out by a Dremel blade. A Dremel blade is a blade, a high-speed blade used to cut bone out, and it would cut your finger off like it wasn't there. Probably cut your arm off. Dremel blade. They are bad news, and yet these fibers resisted the blade. Not entirely, but some of them did. Plenty of them. And when you look at this knot here, this is really amazing because you can see there are different kinds of these fibers. Now, first thought is, well, maybe there's something that grew on it, like molds or fungus or, bacteria, something. But you take it to a mycologist, as we did, took it actually to a group of them. They said, no, we've never seen anything like that. That you can see that's coming out of the matrix of the bone itself. You can see this one got caught in this one, which is a different kind, and it's sort of this wrapped up, but you see it tracks right through here and comes on up. And you can see kind of damage to it from the blade. These are hairs coming out of here, yet a different kind. And this is the third kind. This is a flat kind, and it was snagged on this rough piece of bone here, but look at the end of it, shredded. The Dremel blade did not cut through it like it would have done to my finger. It shredded it. My finger would not shred if the Dremel blade hit it. Okay? So, strong, very, very strong. It's like rebar in concrete to make that skull even harder than being tooth and nail. This is a hard skull. So, here's one of those fibers caught. We were just scanning around, and well, when they saw that, they said, hold on, go back to that. Oh my God, there it is. I mean, there is no better proof than that right there. In the matrix of the bone. Unknown in any other creature on earth. Okay, now this is bones cut but not polished. When you run the Dremel blade, you see the marks of the blade, circular blade cutting through, you can see it. Well, this white stuff, this powder here, is the bone powder that the blade is chewing up and, kind of putting in the air when you cut. Okay, powder. But you can also break off pieces of the bone and polish them very carefully, like with lapidary tools, like jewelry. And this is what human bone looks like. It looks like alabaster. It's beautiful, really. It's beautiful. And these holes is the same hole. It's so big that you had to put it on two frames. But you see, each of these holes is crystal clear. Why? Because when you die, out in the wild, in the open, not the way we die, in the wild, in the open, Mother Nature cleans her plate. Because if she didn't, we'd walk out of this building and there'd be 1,000-foot high piles of bones. Mother Nature cleans her plate. And she does it with bacteria, fungi, mold, and she will break you down to your constituent elements in just a few weeks. It's really astounding how fast. They've done filmings of animals decaying, and it's much faster than they thought it would be. But one of the things that works on you is a kind of bacteria that eats out all of your bone marrow. Every single drop of bone marrow goes, and as you can see, this is what's left, is shining holes. You could eat out of those after the bacteria, they're so clean. Okay? With the Starchild, not so. You've got this stuff. We don't know what it is, but you got plenty of it. And it's not bone marrow, because bone marrow, when it oxidizes, it goes black. It's not that. We don't know what it is. But there is plenty of it. Now, we haven't had the money to do either the fibers or the red residue because there are no protocols for recovering this sort of stuff. Nobody's ever seen it before. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's microscopic in size, very small, and it's very expensive to do all this. And once you got it out, then what test do you run? You don't even know what to do there. This is not to say it's never going to be done. As soon as we prove the Starchild is what it is, and it's okay for scientists to work on it. You know Otzi the Iceman, found in the Alps? Excuse me, surely you do. They've spent $30 million in the past few years on it, doing every kind of conceivable test you can imagine. They'll do the same sort of thing to Starchild when it's okay, when they have permission to do it from the higher authorities that run their sciences. So we haven't been able to do it. Why? There's another reason. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nothing we do from a physical standpoint matters to science. Nothing. I had one of these people that I talked to, and I was really challenging him and really sticking it to him and all that. He said, listen, I don't care if you stack up 10,000 of those differences. It does not matter. Why? None of the Starchild's physical differences means anything to mainstream scientists. They explain them all away with this line, which he said, nature can do anything. I have the perfect answer against you, which is nature can do anything. It can produce any combination you can throw at me. I can rally it right back at you saying nature can do anything. The only thing nature can't do is fool around with DNA. Only DNA impresses mainstream scientists because DNA is the math of biology. It's their tool. It's their favorite weapon. So what that means is we get to run them through with their own sword. Isn't that cool? Run them through with their own sword. Like 2 + 2 = 4. DNA says what it says every time with undeniable precision. If we make our case with DNA analysis, we will win, and we can make our case with DNA. We know that now. It's been a long, hard slog that I'm going to tell you about, but we can do it. All right, here's how it works. You have to start paying attention now. Put the thinking cap on. For those of you who don't understand this, I'm going to make it clear. I'll go slow. Everything about the star child comes down to its DNA. All of the cells in our body, except the sex cells, blood cells, forget about that, 99.99%, the cells in our body have the same thing. A nucleus with all of our chromosomal package that we receive from our mothers and our fathers. 23 chromosomes from mom, 23 chromosomes for dad, make a combination of 46 chromosomes. You with me? The chromosomes are made up of genes, about approximately 30,000 genes. They argue between 20 and 30,000. 30,000 is the high side, 20,000 is the low side, 25,000 is an average. Okay? Still not exactly sure. The genes are made up of the coiled strands of DNA. The coiled strands of DNA are made up of the nucleotides, A, T, C, G, to make these things, which are base pairs. Now, we'll see base pairs in a little more detail, so you have to understand base pairs. Base pairs are arrayed in genes. Thymine, adenine, guanine, cytosine. There are four nucleotides that make up everything that lives on this planet and probably on all other planets. Life is very probably ubiquitous, and it's based on these four nucleotides, which always combine with each other, these two together, to make what are called base pairs. And every gene has so many base pairs, and every chromosome has so many genes like that. You with me? Base pairs are important. Now, how does the base pairs work? How does DNA work? There is nuclear DNA and mitochondrial DNA. Two types of DNA. Understand them. Mitochondrial DNA, this is a cell, like any cell in your body, and you have cytoplasm in here. Imagine just like jelly, and the nucleus is floating in the jelly. Floating within the jelly itself are these things which are called mitochondria, and they come only from your mother. Why? Because it's her egg that passes into you and becomes you. So her mitochondria becomes your mitochondria. As we all sit here today, we are carrying the same, basically, mitochondria as our mother, our grandmother, our great-grandmother, our great-great-grandmother, our great-great-great-grandmother, our great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmother. It passes down with very little change. And because of that, they are able to track back when the first of us began. And this is a little sidetrack. I'm sure most of you probably believe that it was some millions of years ago because we supposedly evolved from a common ancestor with chimps, and it broke off somewhere between 5 and 8 million years ago. But when they did the mitochondrial DNA studies in the mid to late 80s, they found that no, it didn't go back millions of years. It went back only 200,000 years. We don't exist as the way we are until about 200,000 years ago. Big surprise. Big war between the anthropologists who had the bones that insisted that it had to be done by evolution, and we had the geneticists saying, doesn't matter what you say, we've got the evidence here. And guess what? Because of DNA, because of the power of DNA, the geneticists have won. They just have beaten the anthropologists bloody. And so the anthropologists had to come back with, okay, Occam's razor at work. There must have been a bottleneck at around 200,000 years, and everything, all the humans, pre-humans died, except just this few little breeding pair, and everybody evolved from there at around 200,000 years ago. The bottleneck. I don't know if you've heard about it, but this is how the anthropologists explain what for them has to be true against what for the geneticists is true. Okay? So, The mitochondria, 16,000 base pairs in each one of these, a little more, 16,600, something like that. But just say 16,000, keep the number in mind. Pretty good sized number, but not too big. Now, in the nucleus, this because all the chromosomes, the 23 chromosomes from mom, 23 chromosomes from dad, when you put that together, you get 3 billion base pairs. 3 billion base pairs. Now, we have that, we share that with chimps and with gorillas, the 3 billion. Keep that in mind, because it brings up an interesting point in a minute. So, understand mitochondria from mom, nuclear from mom and dad. Will be important. There will be a quiz. DNA arrayed in a gel sheet. Now, you've all seen CSI, I hope. Do they have CSI here? The CSI shows, okay, so you know what gel sheets look like. This is how it always looks. You have the person who's doing the test puts a little dab of their own DNA in it so that they know the gel sheet is working. Okay? They do something else called primer-dimer that sits off kind of by itself like that to also show that it's a live gel sheet and that it's working. And this is what it looks like. A certain part of it, okay. Now, let's start talking about the Starchild's DNA. By the end of '99, I knew that I wasn't going to ever prove it with the physical differences. I had all those physical differences lining up and people saying, I don't care if you throw 10,000 at me, it doesn't matter. I win because I'm the authority and I have nature on my side and nature can do anything. And so I would say, well, what would impress you? And they always would say the same thing. Well, DNA, show me some DNA. Well, they would say that because they knew there was no possibility. As we say in the South, damn bastards. They knew that it couldn't be done at that time. There was no human genome at that time in '99. So it was like, hey, yeah, I got your DNA. Not imagining that here we are 10 years later and there would be so many changes. So at the time, what I needed to know was the DNA even there? Was the nuclear DNA even viable? Because what they were telling me is, if it was buried for 900 years, even in a mine tunnel, there's going to be some degradation, and 900 years makes it really ancient DNA. 50 years is the cutoff point. Anything less than 50 years is reasonably easy to handle. Anything after 50 years is ancient, and it requires much more sophisticated handling. Because when you get samples, if you get even a droplet of breath, even a flake of skin, ruins the sample, contaminates it. You have to treat it with much greater care because there is degradation in it, and you have to preserve what is there. So, there were 6 labs in the world in 1999 that could recover ancient DNA. And by then, by the end of '99, I got it in February of '99. By the end of '99, it was all over the place. It had been on TV, newspapers, magazines. It was well known. And so, none of those 6 labs would touch it with a proverbial 10-foot pole for any amount of money. They just didn't want anything to do with it. It would ruin their reputation to touch it. So I couldn't get the work done that we needed done. But a friend in Canada, Ted Robinson, said, well, I have a friend who is a forensic dental geneticist, and he's starting a new lab at the University of British Columbia, a new teaching lab. And maybe he would do it. Maybe he would be able to tell you if the nuclear DNA is there. So I met with him and he said, yeah, I can't do mitochondrial DNA. We don't have that kind of sophistication here. But if your nuclear DNA, if you're right about it being in the mine tunnel, it may be there and I might be able to recover it. So we gave him several $1,000s and left the skulls with him, and he said, I'll tell you what to find out. Well, what he found out was this. He took this out, and of the human, the first attempt he made on the human, boom, no problem. Perfect recovery, easy. And he said, boy, it's not degraded, it's good. It's good DNA, and it's a human, normal human, no problem. But with the Starchild, they cut out first as they did here. Now, when I see the damage they did, they just didn't know it. They can take fingernails now, little fingernails, and do everything it needs to be done. Took out the condyles, but got it. and then took out the Starchild's condyles, and it took this stuff out, the mastoid, then cut a big hole in it, took out the tooth. They contaminated the first two. Contaminated the first two. They were not an ancient DNA lab. They were a forensic lab, and they were a teaching lab, and they were just getting started. So they had new students, and it was just real easy to contaminate, and so they had two contaminations. But also, by now, they're on a campus. You saw that. They're on a campus. And they are catching real heat. What are you doing with that alien thing on your lab? Get rid of that. You know, that kind of thing, under that pressure. So on the third test, the tooth, they come up with this. Now, it says the second cycle, but he just made a mistake. It was the third one. Result from forensic DNA test from the Bowl lab director. After the customary number of PCR cycles, 28, there was a very weak, and really weak, 200 picograms gender profile. Picograms, 1,000 picograms is usually the minimum threshold at which a reliable reading for forensic DNA can be made. A 200 picogram reading from the second bone sample is the third, taken from the child's mastoid process from the tooth. The result is XY chromosomes, which tells us two significant things. First, the child was male. Second, the DNA is human. Okay? Now, we have a saying down in the deep south where I am from, when you are in really bad shape. They say you are a blowed up peckerwood. And I was a blowed up peckerwood with this result. Because they were saying exactly what science and the critics and the skeptics wanted to hear, which was that the Starchild is a human male, take it home and forget about it and never bother us with it again. And this is why, off of this, is why and how Novella wrote his article that just went out and became gospel to the mainstream regarding the Starchild. But I knew it was wrong, because 200 picograms, that doesn't tell you anything. You need at least 1,000. If you're going to lie to me, why not make it a big lie? A lie that I can't challenge. So I said, look, it's 200 picograms. We've paid you a lot of money. You said you'd get us a result. Take another piece of bone and give me a fourth, take a fourth attempt. Grumble, grumble, grumble. You owe it to us. Grumble, grumble, grumble. Well, but they did it. They cut that piece of the head out. Well, lo and behold, the fourth answer came out exactly, word for word, that. Meaning, shut up and go home. Leave us alone. Now, I did go home, but I didn't shut up, because I knew it was wrong. But nobody would listen to me. Within the community of alternative knowledge, I could not get a hearing, because the mainstream science had blanketed everywhere with the Starchild is human. So I would call up a conference that was going on, and I'd say, I'd like to come talk about the Starchild. Well, they proved that was human, didn't they? What would you want to talk about that for? We don't need to hear about that. Well, I don't think it was. I think they were wrong. They weren't wrong. They're scientists. How could they be wrong? I heard that. Again, well, they're scientists. How could they be wrong? You're just a schmuck. You don't know anything. So anyway, 3.5 years, I pushed the ball up the hill with no help, and I went $50,000 in debt and was on the verge of bankruptcy. And my girlfriend said, if you do not quit this, you are nuts. This has become an obsession. You have to quit. If you don't quit, I'm leaving. Okay. So I sent the word out to my mailing list. Okay, I've done all I can do. I called Ray and Melanie. I said, I've done all I can do. I'm going to go back to my other life, writing, talking about human origins, writing, stuff like that. So when that letter went out, about a week later, a woman from England contacted me, named Belinda McKenzie, and she said, I've recently come into some money. My father died. I've got some money. I've followed your career. I think you may be onto something. What would you need to get another test, a correct test, an ancient DNA test? What would you need? I had no idea. I hadn't even looked at it in a couple of years. So I went out and I found out that there were 24 labs in the world now 4 years later, instead of 6, 24, they could do ancient DNA. It was a proliferating field. And I found some guys willing to do it. And not just guys, good guys. Rip and Molly and Jason Eshelman at a company called Trace Genetics in July of 2003. And these guys were good. They had an absolutely functioning ancient DNA lab, and they were so good that they had worked on the Kennewick Man. If you've ever heard of the Kennewick Man, the famous skeleton, as heads are nodding, it was a skeleton found in Washington State in America that looked like Captain Picard when they did the clay model of it. Which was not what the Indians wanted to hear, that white people had been there way before them, so they got the Clinton administration to just bulldoze it over, and they would, and that skull and skeleton went into the courts for years until the scientists won the ability to examine it. Anyway, so they had worked on that. So these were good guys, and they said, yeah, we'll get you an answer. Don't worry. You pay us the money, we'll get you an answer, and we'll do it right. Because I told them what happened. And I said, look, now I'm telling you, I turned those skulls over in Canada and they came back all butchered and screwed up and everything went wrong. I'm going to be breathing down your neck the whole way this time. They said, no problem. Bring them and we'll cut them together and we'll do whatever you want to do together. And I only had to be around them for a little while to see they were just totally A+ guys, and I just didn't worry about it. But I was there for the cutting of the bone. I was there for the cutting of the bone. And Jason did it, and I want to show you how it went. We're at a table something like this in a room, something smaller than this. But anyway, he's got his Dremel blade, got his goggles on, got his lab coat thing on. Fires up the Dremel blade. It's a little circular thing like this with what looks like a flashlight. Puts it down and just goes. 4 cuts. Cuts out about an inch. Drops down through out the neck hole, and there it is. Cuts that inch into 1/4-inch pieces, to make 4 of them, and that's done. Now it's time to do the Starchild. Now we've got a little bit of smell in the room, a little bit of stink. You know that smell you get when you drill your teeth? That's the collagen in the bone burning from the Dremel blade, but it's not horrible. So he goes to the Starchild to hit, to make the cut there, and he goes, and he puts it down, and it hits, and there's kind of this funny sound, and it kind of bounces up. And he looks at Ripon, what was that? I don't know. He looks at me. I don't know. So he says, okay. So he goes, and he kind of hunkers over it, and he goes, and boy, there's this weird sound, and the blade slows down. You can hear it slowing down, and the stuff just flies out, and the stink is unreal. And he has to go, he really struggled to holding it with the other hand to do, because it's shaking it so, he's having to push so hard. But he finally gets the cut, and it drops out. And the room is filled with this bone powder and stink, horrible stink. We're running for the windows and the doors. It's unreal. And they just said, look, we've never seen anything like this. You have to get this bone analyzed. This is not right. So they cut that into 4 and gave me a piece of it. They said, do something with this. We're going to do the DNA thing, but you need to, and that's why I took it to England and started getting those scanning electron microscope and the other stuff that you saw when we found the fibers and the residue and all that. So, meanwhile, they start what they're doing. What you do when you're going to get DNA, you're going to reduce bone down to its constituent DNA, to do what you do with it. You put it in a test tube with a fluid called EDTA. And you put that test tube in what's called a rocker arm, which is a machine that just does this. Rock, 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 rock. Rocker arm. Okay? And in 1 week, human bone is dissolved down to liquid, and you've got the DNA. It looks like a little cloud of stuff in there, and that's it. And they get that out, and they go to work on it. Simple. Human bone, no problem. EDTA, 1 week, done. Starchild, 1 week, not even changed in the slightest. 2 weeks, not in the slightest. A month, not in the slightest. 2 months, they just let it run, really. They quit after 3 months, not in the slightest. They took one of the other bones after a couple of weeks, and they realized that the EDTA wasn't going to do it, and they said, they let me know, and they said, okay, we got something here that dissolves stone. Stone. It's called Tween 20, and that'll do anything. And we're going to put it in that. And they did, and Tween 20 dissolved it overnight, and gave them the DNA they needed to go to work on it. So, I mean, right away we can see this is not human stuff. Just clearly. In every way we look, this is not human bone. All right, so what they're looking for first is the mitochondrial DNA. Remember, from mom. It's the easier of the two to recover, and it's the simplest of the two to recover. 16,000 base pairs versus 3 billion base pairs. How are we doing? Okay, break soon, and then we'll finish up. Okay, all right. All right, we'll end after this because it's a good exciting point to end. So we got the adult female's mitochondrial DNA, and this is Jason's DNA, and this is the primer dimer, and you see these four right here. First attempt, bright and clear in the gel sheets. She is from haplogroup A. That means she is a typical Mesoamerican, common Mesoamerican type haplogroup A. So when they did the Starchild's mitochondrial DNA, same result. Jason's DNA, piece of primer dimer, these two and these two, you see they're in a different position. So what does that mean? Haplogroup C. Haplogroup C. Another typical Mesoamerican type. So what does it mean? The Starchild's mother is a human. The Starchild's mother is a human, typical haplogroup C, and there's no doubt about it. So, what does it also mean? This is not the Starchild's mother, and up until then we believed that it was. Because that scene that the girl found with the body in the grave and the hand over the arm, that meant that that female buried that dead body, laid down, but left the hand out, laid down beside it, wrapped the hand around her arm, and killed herself. She committed suicide. She died with it. So we believed that it had to be a mother, one of these mothers that had had one of these babies, and that's the star being legends of the Mesoamericans say that aliens would come down, make a woman in a village pregnant, usually a woman without a child, and she would have the child to term, and the village would have to raise it up to the age of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, and they would come get it. So we just assumed that it was one of the star being legends at work, and this proved us wrong in 2003. It was a big shock for us. But also, he said, it looks like your star child is going to be a human because it's got a human mother. So, now we're really hanging on tether hooks, and it's a good time to take a break so you can be hanging on tether hooks, and you'll come back to see how it turns out. 20 minutes. Okay, I'm going to briefly recap where we were. So, Jason and Rippon got the DNA, and they attempted to do the mitochondrial DNA of the human. Mitochondrial DNA of the human, and they found that it's from haplogroup A, haplogroup C, not mother and child. And also, very easy recovery, first time, both, which said that their DNA was very fresh, not really heavily degraded, going to be an easy recovery, no matter what, of the nuclear DNA, which is the important part, the big part, the 3 billion base pairs. So, this is the human's, female's nuclear DNA. Again, that's Jason's, and this is hers. And you see, nice and bright and clear in the gel sheet, first attempt, nuclear DNA. So they called me and they said, yeah, she's perfectly normal, not a problem, and now we're going after the Starchild's, and you need to brace yourself because it's probably going to be human because we know now that it has a human mother. So I said, okay. I didn't care. I just wanted the torture over with. You know, you have to understand, I was not a UFO alien person. I was a human origins and hominoids, Bigfoot and all of that person with everything you know is wrong. And that was my passion. This became a job, and then it became a responsibility that I had to see through to the end, whatever that end was, but the end couldn't come soon enough. And it still can't. To this day, I'm sitting here talking to you. It can't come soon enough. I want this all over with so I can go back to that other life and be that person. because that's who I really am. I'm not the Starchild guy, although that's all anybody knows me as, hardly. So, this was it, and so I said, okay, I don't care, just do it. Just give me the answer. It's an answer I can believe in. And so they tried once, twice, 3, 6 times and got nothing but primer dimer. No recovery of the Starchild's nuclear DNA with a human mother. Now, what does that tell you? What did that tell them? Dad is not human. Because if Dad was human, we would have gotten a recovery as easy and as clear as that. This person had a human mother and a human father. This person had a human mother, but not a human father. Okay? That's in 203. We know that Dad is not entirely human, because if he was, we would have had a recovery. But the problem was this. We didn't know and couldn't say how far away from human Dad was. So all science said was, it's just a whisker away. It's just a razor blade away. It's not couldn't be anything significant. It's just a variation. All you can say, all you can legitimately say about these 6 tests is that the Starchild's nuclear DNA could not be recovered. That's all you can say. It could not be recovered. There must have been some kind of exotic, bizarre degradation that allowed for an easy recovery of the mitochondrial DNA and an easy recovery of the mitochondrial and nuclear DNA of the skull found with it. But there must have been some kind of exotic, bizarre degradation for this to happen. And so we were just stuck, hamstrung again. So I said, well, to Jason and Rick, well, what can we do? What can we say? What can we do here? And they said, well, we know that there are attempts to create a system for recovering DNA that's going to bypass primers. Now, what are primers? Primers are what all of this that you've seen here were used to recover the DNA. What are primers? They're strings, man-made strings of base pairs, a few thousand base pairs long. Imagine them like biological keys searching out biological locks. Human-only primers designed to recover human DNA. And there were only a couple of dozen of them. That's all you needed. All you needed. So those biological locks, chemical locks, keys would go in looking for the locks, find them, lock up, go out, and go through the gel sheet, and there you have it. You'd have your answer. So with the Starchild, it was clear that the primer system wasn't going to work. It didn't work here 6 times, so what were they able to say in their report? It is impossible to recover this nuclear DNA with the technology of the day, which is 203, which means that the report of the Bowl lab in 1999 is absolutely and conclusively proved wrong. And so this is what I tried to tell Novella, and this is what he says, don't even bother me with the facts. Don't even bother me with the facts. That's not what I want to believe, and that's not what I want my friends to believe. Okay, so Jason and Rippon said if you'll wait 3 to 5 years, there will be a breakthrough because they're working on a machine that will recover DNA base pair by base pair. Just base pairs, one by one. And sure enough, they were right. 3 years later, 454 July 2006, 454 Life Science Technologies sequences genomes this way. Glory, hallelujah, we now have what we need. We can now for sure sequence the Starchild's genome, its entire genome, no matter how bizarre it is, base pair by base pair, we can recover it. We can find out what it is. The problem is, this technology is incredibly expensive. They started applying it immediately to the Neanderthal. They've been working on that for 4 years now, to the tune of $15 million or something like that. Or more, could be pushing toward 20. It was 15 last I heard. But other people use it to sequence the genomes of other things now. They are sequencing genomes like crazy. They build these machines as fast as they can make them, sell them for $500,000 each, and can't make them fast enough for labs that want them because they can sequence Anything, any creature out there can be sequenced. Bacteria, viruses, anything. Anything. And they do. And they have. Over the past 5 years, what has it been? 6 years? 4 years, sorry, 4 years. They have sequenced, science has sequenced thousands of species around the world. These labs, this equipment is done all over the world. And there's new equipment now, a variation of this called Illumina. It's just an exploding field, the recovering of genomes, because it tells you everything. I mean, absolutely everything. It's great technology. Great technology. But we couldn't afford it. We just couldn't afford it. And when I would try to talk people into paying for it, they would say, but can you guarantee that there will be a recovery? If I give you this couple $100,000 to get it done, as the price went steadily down, if I give you a couple $100,000, can you do it? And I would say, yeah, I'm sure we can. I'm sure, but that, there wasn't any proof, because the test, all they had to do was go on the Wikipedia or whatever and read, and it was enough to put doubt, and I couldn't convince anybody. And now it's even worse. But early this year, a geneticist contacted me, a top geneticist in the U.S. working for a big lab. The head of the lab said that a friend of his wife told her about me and the Starchild, and the wife read the books, the e-book and the book, and went through the website and convinced herself that I was legitimate, and then started working on her husband. And he thought, of course, that I was just a crank of some kind, until the wife pestered him enough to read the e-book, and then he read the book, and then he went through the website. Then he contacted me and he said, I've read everything I can get my hands on about you, and I've watched the videos and everything. I believe you're onto something. I believe you're legitimate. And I can tell you that if you will send me a sample of your bone, I can tell you whether or not that nuclear DNA is there. Because now there is a technique, a refined technique of shotgunning. Shotgunning has been around for a while. But he says, I can recover pieces of your nuclear DNA, if it's there, down to 200, 300, 400, 500 base pairs long. Doesn't need to be thousands anymore. It can be just a few hundred, and if they're there, I can get them. He said, are you willing to do that? I said, absolutely. Every time anyone has ever made me an offer to push those chips out to the middle of the table, I do it, because I want it over. I want this monkey off my back. And so I just, got that sample to him just as quick as I could. And he said, I'll let you know when I have something. A few weeks later, he contacts me and he says, well, okay, here's where it is. Sure enough, we can sequence it. And here it is. This is just one of several of these, but you see these 8 connections here. That's the start. You saw that sheet earlier. This is the experimenter. And this is the primer dimer hanging off here. But there it is, there it is. It's real. The Starchild's nuclear DNA is there, and it is recoverable. But he said, when I sent it to the NIH, now that you need to know what the NIH is. In the States, the National Institute of Health is our big organization that hands out billions of dollars to scientists who ask for grants to get the money to do what they want to do. It's what I can't do. There's no way I can put in for a grant and get any money to do anything. Get that. Get out of our sight. We don't want to even think about you, much less give you money. But they can, and they do, to sequence anything they want. But because it's government money, they are obligated to send the results to the National Institutes of Health, which gives them the money. So every genome that's been sequenced in the last 4 or 5 years by these machines that you saw is recorded in the NIH database. They have over 140, and they're adding new ones all the time, species types, like a dog, like a cat, like a cow. And then they have thousands of species within those species types. Different kinds of dogs, different kinds of cows, different kind of bacteria, different kind of viruses. They have trillions, try to keep this number in mind, trillions of coherent base pair sequences logged into the NIH database. so that when a geneticist gets a new sequence, all he does is log it into the NIH, and the NIH tells him where it fits on the genome, on the chromosomes within the genome of something that's already been sequenced. It's real easy, and it's real quick, and it's very efficient. So he sent the samples, a few dozen of the Starchild shotgun recoveries, to the NIH, and sure enough, came back. Some of them were indeed human. Some of the Starchilds, this is a 265 base pair string. Homo sapiens, if you can't read, it's chromosome 1, genomic contiguous, just saying where it is. This one happens to be on chromosome 1 of humans. But this is representative of dozens. I could put dozens up here, but it would just get boring. Okay? But some of them, to their great surprise, a DNA segment 342 base pairs long, that's pretty good size, proves some nuclear DNA is not human. No significant similarity found. See it? For reasons why I click here, and I'll explain. No significant similarity found. This means some of the Starchild's nuclear DNA cannot be found in the NIH database that contains trillions of base pair segments from thousands of species on Earth. Draw your own conclusions. Is that alien or is that not alien? What would you call that? I think it's alien. For reasons why I click here, this refers to a list of possible errors in the submission process. Our geneticist obtained the same results with multiple samples, so he has no doubt that he did them correctly. You do it enough and you get the same answer. You know you're doing it right. So, glory, hallelujah. Now, that's kind of hard to read, and this is a different thing. I just asked, is there a different form we can get so it's easier to see, and we got this back. This one is 232 letters, but it's still the same thing. No significant similarity found. This is it, folks. This is history as big as history can be made. This is landing men on the moon. This is proving aliens exist. This is proving an alien was real 900 years ago and lived and died and was buried on this earth. So you are the fourth audience that I've been out to tell this to. Fourth. So it isn't that widely known. It's on the website and all that, but it's spreading out. But you're early into the game here as far as this goes. And I hope you appreciate that. It's really cool that you're here and you're getting to find out about this. Now, this is something else that he did. He's done this more recently. I said, well, can you do anything else besides that? So he did a spectrophotometer reading for human DNA and Starchild DNA. Now, it's just light passing through. You don't need to know what it is. This is the result. This is absolutely purified human DNA. This is what it's supposed to look like, or something close to that, right? And you can see the Starchild's does look close to that. But it's like I want to be human so bad, but I just can't quite make it, But I'm human enough. You can kind of see it, just kind of, not there. But it's there. It is there. It is there. You know it's there. But when he did it, ran it through electrophoresis analysis, the gel sheet, a different kind of gel sheet analysis, specifically for human. This is what perfect human looks like. Front edge, rear edge, and all this in between. So the Starchild should look something like this, and this is what it looked like. Nothing. He was very surprised. Very surprised. I don't know what that means. It just means that more of it is different than we thought. Now, let's understand what he's done here. He's recovered in the range of about 30,000 when you add together all the hundreds and the couple thousands that he's had. About 30,000 of the base pairs have been recovered of the 3 billion that we need. Now, imagine, if you would, that this is the 3 billion is like a loaf of bread. A loaf of bread. He's cut off a very thin slice off the end. From what we need, what he has is a very thin slice. And he said, you give me 15 years, I can do the whole loaf of bread doing it by shotgun. But it's stupid because those machines are out there. We just have to pay for them. But he said, I can shotgun it for 15 years and I can get it. But we obviously want to do it with a machine. But he says that thin slice is enough to know what the loaf of bread is. You can smell it, you can feel it, you can taste it, you can see it. And you know what you have. And it's not a human loaf of bread. It's not a chimp loaf of bread. It's not a gorilla loaf of bread. It's not a Neanderthal loaf of bread. It is different. And we can prove it. That's what this is all about. So, where are we now? Trying to figure out how it happened. How did it happen? Can humans and aliens procreate? All right? Can they get together and make a baby? Well, yes, if the difference between the two of their genomes falls within 3%. Why do we know that? Because a chimp and a human's genomes are 97 to 98% the same. You get arguments. Some people say it's 2% different. Some people say it's 3% different. I go with 3%. Let's just say 97% the same genome chimps have and we have. 3% difference. There is no way that a chimp and a human can make an offspring. So that we know that if this is happening, that has to fall within that 3%. We have always assumed that the Starchild, when its genome was recovered, we had hoped that it would fall closer to 3% than to the 99.9% that all of us are. We're all 99.9% the same. You get some arguments and people are trying to say, well, maybe it's 99.8, 99.7, but you hear most consistently 99.9. We're almost clones. We're so alike. That little bit makes all the difference in all of us, right? But if you look at 3% makes us, the difference between us and chimps, that sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Because there's a lot of difference between us and chimps. And gorillas are 95%. 5% difference, 95% the same. Rats are 70% the same. And a lot of animals are the same. It's all blended in together. The same material is used over and over again in various species. Lots of different species. So for this, it's got to fall within 3%. We're hoping it's falling closer to the chimp because if it falls real close to the humans, what are the scientists going to say? It's just a variation. It's just a freak. But if it's over near a chimp, it's pretty hard to make that argument, right? So we always felt that if it came in closer to 3, we would win. If it came in closer to 99.9, they would win. All right? So I say to him, given what you have, where do you think the difference is going to be if we're talking procreation? He says, oh no, we're not talking procreation. The difference is going to be between 10 and 50%. Between 10 and 50%. Now that's a big margin because he only has a little bit. But he says if you just extrapolate it out, that's where it's going to fall. Probably in the range 15, 20, 25. So very different that it's not even a question that it's an alien. In fact, it may be all alien except for the mother. Now I know what that sounds like. We're just speculating now. I know. She's saying, what? I was the same way. What? You know, but this is where it is. This is going to blow you away, but this is where we are right now. Subject to change. Subject to the loaf of bread. But this is what we're looking at with the small part that we have, the slice that we have right now. Human and chimp genomes. Just so that you know the difference. This is a little sidetrack, but it's very interesting. Human and chimp share everything the same pretty much, but there are some significant differences. The main one being that all higher primates, chimps, gorillas, right on down, have 48 chromosomes. 48 chromosomes, 24 from each parent. We are the only higher primate with 46. Where did those 2 chromosomes go? And if that's a lot of DNA. And if those 2 chromosomes went, how do we still share 97% of the same genome and 95% of the same genome with gorillas? How do we do that? Well, the truth of it is, the 2 chromosomes that we're missing are not missing. They have been altered. You'll notice that the 2nd and 3rd primate chromosome in a human has been fused. Somebody has neatly clipped off the telomeres and fused it back together, those 2 ends together, such that they continue to function. Now, genes are sensitive things. You have to know just what you're doing to make it work right. And to do that is really an amazing thing. And guess what? Nature can do anything. Nature can do anything. That's what they tell you. I'm telling you. You confront them with this, they said nature did it. Nature can do anything. We can show you other examples of that. And sure, nature can do that. It's only done in domesticated plants and animals where you see weird things happen in the genomes because they were genetically engineered. That's the truth of it. With humans, guess what? Some of these other, 9 of these other chromosomes, segments have been taken out, taken out, flipped in on end, and put back in, and, and glued back. Boy, I really hit a lot. And glued and put back in. Taken out, flipped over, and put back in. 9 other ones. And on top of that, if everything evolved the way they say it did, we should have everything somewhere behind us, right? Of our 25 or 30,000 genes, we have 232 genes not found in any other species anywhere else on the planet. Where did they come from? You know what scientists say? Well, we must have been infected by some exotic bacteria that left their traces and then went away. Occam's razor. I have made fire. I have thought of a simple answer. You know, it's just ridiculous. So this is just to show you that this is my other work. This is the work I love, you can tell. The human origins, hominoid, stuff like that. This is what I really like. But I won't hit you with any more of that because if you don't know about this, it's got to be a hammer shot for you. I know that. Okay, so we're talking about if we can't have a sexual offspring, it has to be in vitro. The Starchild then turns out to probably be in vitro. If it's that big a difference, it couldn't be anything else. And we're doing that now, and it's test tube babies. You know how it works. It isn't that hard, so it wouldn't be for a higher race of beings to do it 900 years ago or 9,000 years ago for that matter, or 200,000 years ago when we were created. All right, so I said, well, okay, how would it happen? How could it possibly happen that you have something that's so heavily alien, and you can look, there's nothing hardly left of the human in the skull, it's dominantly alien, but how can you get something so heavily alien coming out of a human mother? And so he said, well, maybe it's a 3-parent birth. I said, what? 3-parent birth? What's that? Well, it sends me the slide. If a woman has what's called mitochondrial disease, that means her mitochondria are bad, and she has a child, that's a dead child. That's a horribly screwed up child. Now, if she wants to have more children and they know that she has mitochondrial disease and she and her partner want to have more children, well, what can they do? They can do this. It's incredible. They can take healthy nuclear DNA is removed from patient's egg cell, leaving behind faulty mitochondrial DNA. This is bad mitochondria. They take out her sex cells, her 23, remember in the sex cells you have only 23 chromosomes to match with the cells from the sperm who make the 46. So you take out her 23 chromosomes that she's going to add to the zygote package, and they take a good egg from a woman who does not have mitochondrial disease, and they put it in, they take her genetic material out, and they put hers in. So now she mixes with her partner's sperm, and they make a zygote in the healthy egg with the healthy mitochondrial DNA. And this child is going to be born in her, out of her, and it's going to have the DNA, the nuclear DNA of her husband rather, or her partner, and herself, and it's going to have the mitochondrial DNA of the 3rd parent. Is that not cool? Is that not cool? Yeah, I know. She's sitting there going, what? Yeah, it's goggle-eyed, isn't it? Yeah, I know. It's really, really cool. Now, with that in mind, how would an alien have been done like that? Well, what he said was you could have an alien couple. Why they would do this, and I'm not buying this entirely because it doesn't make sense to me, but why they would do it. But you could have an alien couple, make a zygote in vitro, take out the sex cells of a human, put it in, gestate it, and produce the star child out of a human mother. Now, it just makes no sense to me. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? Now, if they're like us, if they're a lot like us, which, the Greys, I don't know how much they're like us, but genetically, if everything's made out of those 4 nucleotides, they're probably a lot like us. And so that would explain the 10 to 50%. It begins to make sense, even though it's just still incredible. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around it, and I know all of you are too. But nonetheless, this is where things are leaning right now. So, we're down to this, folks. We're down to just simply needing the money. Show me the money. Remember the movie, Show Me the Money. And this is what it comes down to, and this is what I'm out on the road talking to people about it. This is what we need. This is what we need to do. We need to recover the loaf of bread. We need to recover the genome. We need, at the same time, we're planning to make 2 documentary films because there's 2 parts to the process. There's recovery of the loaf, which takes 3 to 4 months, and there is reading all of the ingredients in the loaf, which is another 8 to 12 months. So we're going to make 1 documentary film based on the recovery, which is going to tell us that difference within a range of about 5 points, 10 to 15%, or within a 5-point margin of error, a ballpark estimate. And then the final part, the 8 to 12, is going to narrow it down to about a 1% margin of error. We'll know exactly what it is and what the differences are. And more than that, we'll be able to then start the process of doing some bioengineering and adding to the storehouse of knowledge about human health, because there will be things that will come. Right now, as we sit here, they're trying to figure out what in the DNA of a Neanderthal is better than the 4,000 plus genetic defects we have. Did you know that? We have over 4,000 genetic defects, more than just about any other species. 4,000. And the Neanderthal is going to have spots in it where it is perfect, where we are bad, where we're wrong. And there may be a way to fix us using that. Well, the star child is going to be even better than that. And it can start right away with collagen, because we know a lot about collagen. And its collagen is so much denser and so much better than ours. What if we could find a way to just improve the bone solidity, the bone strength of 10 to 10% or 20% of everybody? No more osteoporosis. A wonderful thing. That's like within 5 years, maybe 10 at the most. And who knows what other else kind of things can come from this. So, we're not just making history, we're going to improve the lot of every human being on Earth. If we can keep this stuff out of the hands of Monsanto and the big companies, that are going to be after it. And that's part of the challenge as well. To find somebody who will invest the money that we need, who has the same sort of attitude that we have about it. Not in it to make every buck possible, but in it to do the most good possible. That's my attitude, and that's the attitude I want to bring to the deal. But I'm telling you all, this investment is a very sound investment for whoever does it. It's a few $1 million. It isn't bad, really. It isn't bad for 2 documentary films. They will make 5 to 30 or more times their money back. And I've got, for anybody that knows anybody that they think might be interested in this, I can get you the documents that show what the deal is and what the percentages are and what the rate of investment is. This is Switzerland, and this is where money talks, BS walks, and small change rides the bus. So I know you guys must know some people who can do this. So if you do, please get in contact with me. I can get you information. I can give you information. I can give them information. Now, I'm going to close with a quick story after I show you. If you want to know more about it, this is the fully updated ebook, which is available on the Star Child Project. If you just want the overview kind of that I've given you and then some, and you want to show friends something that they'll read, you can read this in less than an hour, easy, anybody. It's just pictures and text box, pictures and 125 photos and illustrations and text boxes, up to date though. This is the book, and this is only up to 207, but this is the backstory. This tells all the personalities, the people involved, the various scientists involved, the details of how the ups and the downs, the ups and the downs, the ups and the downs that this 12-year cycle has been. Now, let me close with the biggest, probably down of all. When I got the word of this, it was late March when he said, "You've got it in the bag. You're going to make history, it's going to be a big deal, and we want to be involved. Start finding your money and getting it underway. We're ready to go." And so I live in Florida on the coast where you saw, and this is before the oil spill, so the oil spill gutted everybody. Our summer has just been horrible. Everybody that was in real estate or anything there just been horrible. So, but this was before then. So I said to this friend who's a deal maker, I said, "Do you know anybody that might be interested in this?" And he said, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. He's 81 years old. He's in failing health. His wife is dead. He has horrible children that he hates. They're just going to take his money and just throw it away as soon as he's dead. And in America, you have to give them some. You can give a lot to charity, but you have to give them a certain amount, or they can sue you and sue the state and get it all. So anyway, he knew what he had to do. But he had told my friend, he said, "Look, I would give anything if I could just find something worthwhile to put my money into that would leave a lasting legacy of good other than these horrible children that I've produced." He said, "I just don't want to die as another rich old fart on a big pile of money." He says, "Anybody, that's common. Anybody can do that. I would love to leave something behind." And my friend remembered that. So I said, "Well, geez, why don't you tell him we've got something that's going to make a mark on history like few other things ever have. Let him know." And so we did. And he told him, and he said, "Okay." The guy explained it fully, and he said, "You tell those people that I'm going to check them out. And if they check out, if everything checks out, I'm going to do their deal." It sounds great to me. It sounds exactly like what I'm looking for. So he did that. Checked me out, checked out. We got Matt Richards already, so he's a film director from England, works for the BBC to do the documentaries. We can check him out. We're going to go to the lab, did that, talked to geneticists, everything checked out, everything's fine. So a few weeks later, he goes to his attorney. 9:30 on a Monday morning, the attorney made a note. And he said, "I want to do this deal. I'm convinced. They're legitimate. I want my name on it. Start the paperwork." That afternoon, he went home and he called some friends, and told them about it. He was excited. He got too excited. 11:30 that night, he had a massive stroke and has not woke up from it yet. But we had to wait a couple months just to see. It would be very unseemly if we're out searching for the money and he wakes up out of the hyperbaric chamber and wants to do the deal. You see what I mean? So that's a true story. That's a true story. Now, I can't tell you what a body blow that was. I can't tell you how depressive it was. I can't tell you how hard it was. I've been knocked down a bunch with this thing, but boy, it was hard to get up from that leg. Because we had gone out and we had set everything in place. Going to film and we were going to move it and set up our business in Houston because Houston has all the medical facilities there. Best entertainment attorney in the South is in Austin, Texas. The camera crew that Matt Richards uses when he shoots in the States is located in Dallas-Fort Worth. Everything perfect. We lined it all up, ready to go, and he has the stroke. So anyway, that's what can happen. And what has happened, and we're hoping that maybe it's some sign that we're going to get a better deal down the line, but I don't see how. But anyway, if you can help us, folks, I would appreciate anything you can do. Anybody you know, we're legitimate. They can check us out. It's all real. You've seen this. I've got the ebook. I'll send it to anybody. I've got the documents for the deal. Anybody wants that? I need help. I cannot do everything by myself. And one of the reasons I was so happy that Philip invited me here is I know that this is money central. So do what you can. I hate to be mercenary about it, but there's just no other way. I have to ask, and I have to put it out there, and I hope that
some of y'all will take it to heart as a serious need and as a very, very valuable project. Thank you very much.